Byron Donalds wants to keep Florida great.
With Trump, our economy will boom again.
With Floridians feeling the pain from the home insurance crisis,
is that part of your plan to help keep the insurance companies accountable?
How insurance is supposed to work is,
and education in general struggling across the country.
Members of the Florida Education Association and United Teachers called out the board's priorities and what they say is a lack of investment in public schools.
We have about 4.3 million students in the state of Florida. About half of them are at what we call grade level. The other half are not.
I think education is becoming a huge problem. You have all these kids dropping out of public school and choosing to do private school.
They're indoctrinating my children in school.
Byron Donalds is running on both insurance reform in the state of Florida and has impressive plans for education in Floridian schools.
Kids are learning using AI.
One of the things that I want to do as governor is create an AI sandbox.
What's your opinion on what they're going to do about cloud seeding?
Do they actually do that? That's confirmed.
Yeah, it's confirmed.
This is the ManLab podcast with Byron Donalds.
Why politics? I'm dealing with my HOA right now, and I'm ready to shoot myself in the face. I could not imagine the stress.
Yeah, like were you the kid that was
it.
in politics in high school, like in college? Did you go through it all like younger in life? Did you do like the high school politics scene, or was it something you decided as an adult to jump into?
Oh, it was definitely not a kid thing. Hell no.
All right.
If you had came to me at 25 and said
you weren't student body
you're going to
president,
be in Congress and run for governor, I'd have been like, you're lying. I'm not that person.
Really?
No. It really started out of my career. I was in banking. I was in insurance at the time. I started in banking, moved to insurance. And when the financial collapse happened in 2008, there was obviously a lot of concerns in the markets. Our clients for the company I was working for was out of Taiwan. And so I was asked to do all the research because I was in banking before I got to the company. And I started watching congressional hearings, and I was just like, who the hell are these people? They don't know what they're talking about. And I just started watching it more and reading about politics and just really got engaged in it. And it was, it's just one of those things that became a passion project. Like, let me learn more about this thing. And when the Tea Party rallies started in Southwest Florida, in Naples, I heard about one in the local paper, and I went to it just to see what it was about. And then from there, it just started this journey of me in politics. Yeah. So it was not something I dreamed about as a kid.
Dang,
I was not the student government guy.
I had a whole
That was
theory.
not
It was
me.
like maybe because I did a bit of research and found out like you were jumped by a gang or something in 5th grade. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And like I was like my theory was like maybe he just like wanted to take down authority, like bad authority figures or something.
Nah.
No.
Man,
I always figured it was people who get into politics because you see something about the world as it is and you want to change it. And you feel like I can correct that wrong. And so probably the financial crisis and a lot of people making too much money off of a bad situation and too many people losing, their livelihoods maybe. Was that kind of like how you were saying, I want to make sure this shit doesn't happen again to the average guy?
It wasn't even that. I started getting involved in local politics and just being involved in the grassroots. And when you do that, you start being a part of a lot of different meetings. And I remember I was in Toastmasters at the time. So I had a speech. It was called, I got to remember the speech. It was called like America the Beautiful was a speech I gave. And the local Tea Party guy had put his name in the paper. This was like October of 2010. And I'd already been to one of the rallies and kind of just been in and out, but didn't really talk to many people there. So I sent him the speech and I go, hey, if you ever need a speaker, let me know. Because in Toastmasters, they always want you to go out and start giving speeches in different venues so you can perfect your craft. So I gave him the speech and he called me back in like an hour and goes, I'll give you 5 minutes. So it's still on YouTube to this day. First speech I've ever gave was in the back of a flatbed pickup truck on Pine Ridge Road in US 41. And it was like a 5-minute, 6-minute speech. And that was in 2010. So what happens in politics is once you start speaking publicly, people start to see you as a thought leader and then also as a potential candidate. So I would host local radio shows, like I would fill in for people or I would join somebody's local radio show. One of the first shows I started being a regular commenter on was a Saturday show called the Controversial Conservative. There's a local guy in town, a guy named Scott Lepore. It was his show. Scott heard me speak somewhere and was like, hey, you should come on the show. And I would do that. When Drew Steele was the morning host here at 92.5 for a long time, Got a chance to meet Drew after coming on the show periodically, and he asked me if I would host a show for him. So when he would go on vacation, I would actually be his fill-in host, and that sucks because you got to be up at 5 a.m. to get to the studio at 5:50 because it's all the way in Fort Myers, downtown Fort Myers. I live in Naples, and you're hosting a 3-hour radio show about politics and conservatism, and so you better know your stuff. And then from there, people just started saying like, "Man, this guy's actually pretty good. He knows what he's talking about. And he's seems intelligent and pretty likable." And in 2012, when Connie Mack decided to run for the Senate, a bunch of people in the Tea Party movement asked me to run for Congress, and I did. And that was crazy. It was a crazy experience. Never been in elected politics before. Learned a lot.
How old were you at that point?
I was 33.
I think about myself at 33. I could barely, couldn't even imagine
I was 33.
having that level of responsibility or being around that type of people that you had to probably rub shoulders with, and must have been like, how the hell did I end up here of all people?
That's exactly how I felt. It was like, how did I get into this situation? You start thinking early on in that race, it was like, well, how do I get myself out of this?
Like, how do I unwind it?
I'm already thinking that. I was
without looking like a quitter. I just want to.
And I'm like, I don't know about this.
Like, but then you're in it, and then it's like,
But then people get behind you and start propping you up a little bit and probably pushing you forward a little bit more. And I feel like that would get it in its own way, kind of, motivating. All of a sudden you have people on your team and holding signs up for you. And you're like, man, all right.
Where I felt it was starting to go right for me was when we would debate. Because when it was time to debate, you sit next to all these people who were running for office, and they were state legislators. Trey Radel, who's now our drive time host, and has been involved in politics a long time. Trey was the front runner in that race. So you're on stage with him. You're on stage with state legislators. You're on stage with people who know this business, and then me, and I'm the new guy. And, everybody was cordial. They were like, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. But then, they probably were like, who the heck is this guy? This guy ain't doing anything. And then the debates would start. And I remember no matter what room we went into, I would walk in and people would say, well, who's this guy? And then we would walk out and they would be like, oh my gosh, who the heck is that guy? Like, I like that guy. And that's where I started to really get my footing is knowing that not only that I know the issues, but I knew how to communicate the issues. And we started picking up support, yeah.
Find out if you may have low testosterone for free with the Adam test. Now, sometimes it's a little bit nerve-wracking to go into a clinic to get a full blood panel to find out your hormone levels. And sometimes you might just want to sort of kick the tires just a little bit. If you are that person, the Adam test is for you. All it is a couple of questions that are completely non-intrusive, non-invasive, that will help give an indication to you whether you may or may not have low testosterone. And the best part is the Adam test is accurate up to 88% of the time. So for something as simple as a questionnaire, that is a very high number. Now, if you want to make use of that, you can do it online right now. It takes less than 30 seconds to fill out, and it is at bit.ly/free Adam test. That's free ADAM test. Now, if you don't want to remember that, the link is in the description of wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. And then after you've filled out the questionnaire, you will now have a better idea of whether you may or may not have low testosterone, and if you need to take the next step, which is a detailed blood panel with a clinic such as T Clinics USA. So again, to make use of that, go to bit.ly/free Adam test, and let's continue to making men great again. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, nice. So for me, I got like a kind of semi-personal question because we were impacted by Milton, and one of the things you're running on, which like really I'm like, oh, yes, is insurance reform.
Yeah.
And like there's a couple of things. Like I was very fortunate. I have some great friends that they're adjusters and they help deal with some of the stuff. And honestly, like the flood part was fine. Like it was actually a smooth thing. But I got to experience the pushback from like our homeowners insurance. Like we qualified fully for a roof replacement. They're like, nah, you get like one shingle replaced, and like we had to go to, I think it's like appraisal after that.
Right.
And so I was chatting to my friends. This is like a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying they're like, you're lucky that your insurance company does appraisal because it's not compulsory in the state of Florida as compared to like Louisiana, which then has like a trickle-down effect where it's like if you then try and sue them, now you've got to pay 30%. I think it was recently that they made it like if you have to sue your insurance company and then you win because they weren't paying you enough, now you also have to pay 30% attorney fees, which didn't prior exist. So like say you get $1 million in coverage, I still need to pay $300,000 out of pocket, which I can't do. So is that like part of your plan or something to help like keep the insurance companies accountable, maybe put like some appraisal legislation in or something like that so that people are protected against these billion-dollar companies that do really well?
Well, I think look, when you get into insurance, the first thing we want to do is look at the capital requirements. So how insurance is supposed to work is everybody pays premiums into this pool.
Yes.
The carrier has to keep a certain level of earnings in the company. Those are your baseline capital requirements. And the thought process is that if there's enough capital reserves in the company, that when a portion of those policyholders have to make a claim, there's the residual dollars in the company to make those claims out while you keep the pool alive.
Yes.
In order to keep going. So generally, that's how it works. In Florida, because our dollar amount per claim are higher because of storms, it makes it real difficult for companies to come in here and write. So one of the things that I want to look at is the capital requirements themselves around a carrier. You got to have carriers who are going to be able to go through multiple storms and be able to stay up. So we want to look at cap requirements both at the carrier level and then also what's called the reinsurance level. I'm getting super technical, but it's important. People need to know this stuff. Like every insurance company offloads a portion of their risk to what's called a reinsurance company. So depending on the capital requirements and the structure of the reinsurance pools determines if the actual frontline carrier, the people you write your policy with, if they'll be able to, number one, stay in business through a storm cycle, or number two, have the ability to write either better coverage or more robust coverage or coverage that gives them an ability to make a more definitive claim towards whatever happens. To the piece you're talking about, I think for people, when they have a policy, the number one thing post-storm is, can I get an adjuster to come out and assess damage quickly? Because once the storm goes through, I've been through many of them here, but I've been here 4 years and gone 4 hurricanes so far. Yeah, like as an elected official, the two that were devastating to Southwest Florida, and Helene and Milton did damage here, but the two that were devastating were Ian and Irma. Yeah. And then before that, you have to go back to 05, 06, 07. There was a handful in 12 and 13, but Ian and Irma were devastating to Southwest Florida. Yeah. So through that situation, what you realize is people got to be able to get an adjuster on the ground as quickly as you can, and then people need an answer. If you're going to insure it, tell me. If you're not going to insure it, tell me. That way, people can make adjustments about what they're going to do going forward. The number one thing I want to do is make sure that carriers are making their claims promptly. Yeah. A lot of that starts with adjusting. Maybe bringing in appraisal language will be really helpful. Yeah. Now, to the stuff the legislature did a couple of years ago, the legislature and the governor did a lot of tort reform in the state. The thought process is that lawsuit abuse in the civil system is what has driven up not just insurance costs in part, not always, but also the part you're talking about where you got to pay 30%, because the thought behind that is, well, if parties don't have to come to the table with dollars for the attorneys, then what the attorneys will tend to do is slap their fees on the settlement. Yeah. So if the settlement is $100,000, but with attorneys the fees is $300,000, then that cost doesn't just come out of thin air. It just goes back into the insurance pool that every policyholder has to pay in higher insurance premiums. So the thought process around the tort reform issues were like, let's stabilize the civil system, the tort system, so that they don't explode premium costs. We're in the middle of seeing if that actually worked or not. Yeah. So it takes like probably another 2 to 3 years to really see if those reforms had the effect of stabilizing insurance costs.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, a storm hits, you got to repair your house. You want to get paid, and we want to make sure that carriers are doing.
Because I was talking to my public adjuster about that stuff, and he was like saying he theorizes that if the appraisal stuff was made mandatory, he's like the suing would probably drop. Like, I mean, he was making like made up numbers. Like he said, like say 10% go to litigation, it probably would drop to like 1%. Like the litigation part would be remediated by an appraisal thing. Well, it helped with me personally. So that's why I was like, oh, okay. I now because I've gone through it, I'm like, I kind of get it a little bit, but I'm still ignorant.
Well, here's how you know here's how you'll know which party won't like it. Because if, to his point, if the appraisal process would cut down lawsuits, then the trial bar will hate it.
So it's a trial bar? Sorry?
So anybody that goes into goes to sue an insurance company, you got to get an attorney. So that's the trial bar.
Yeah.
And so, all the civil litigation attorneys, they will
fight the appraisal step
because they think it'll take down the amount of lawsuits. And what they will say is people deserve to have an attorney to have their claims adjudicated. I totally agree with that. That's really a core tenet of our Constitution is your ability to actually have your grievance adjudicated in a court of law. And so going down an appraisal route, if that's going to be the solution, what I say, we'll see who barks first, is because if the insurance companies don't like it, they'll be saying, oh, this is going to drive up premiums. If the trial bar doesn't like it, they will say the insurance companies are lying to you. This is still going to drive up premiums. Yeah. And so a lot of times when you go through these situations, what I find the right solution is, you get both parties in a room, you sit down and you watch them fight it out in front of you. And real quick, you can assess who's talking, who's lying, who's bringing BS to the argument, and what's real, what's not. And if you're really going to find a deal that works for Floridians, both the carrier insurance companies and the trial attorneys both of them are not going to be happy. Yeah. But it's not about them, it's about citizens.
Yeah. And just for people who are not sure what we're talking about with appraisals, it's if, say, your insurance company, their appraiser comes, or their adjuster comes in and goes, all right, you get $5,000 coverage, that's it. But you have like a public adjuster and they're like, no, you should be getting 55. They get what they call like an appraiser, which is like an umpire. So
they get a third party to come in and assess
they
what
come
it
in
is.
and they basically are like an umpire and they're like, this is what we have to pay, and then the insurance company has to pay that amount within 30 days.
Yep.
And I mean, it made total sense because like, numbers wise, it was like my adjuster was like, you get paid this much. The insurance company was like, nah, you get this much. And then the funny thing was when we got an appraiser to come in, I actually got 90% of what my public adjuster said. And so, I mean, look, I got the letter that they were dropping me before I got the check. Let's just say that. Like my insurance company dropped me.
And so like right now, because obviously, we're in the middle of this campaign for governor. Insurance is the number one issue in the state.
Yeah, because it's making housing almost unaffordable.
Well, there's a lot of things making housing unaffordable.
Well, interest rates play a role, materials play a role, but
like 2% of my my house is like my mortgage is basically the same as my insurance right now. I'm paying for my house twice.
Right.
And like I love where I live, and it's just like. Then as the other trap is like, I can't really sell because people see, the second they see the insurance, they're like, why would I pay that? And I'm like, fair. So
I think the piece about why would people come in and buy it? Because we're the best state in the country.
Right.
Oh,
So trust me, people will come in.
And insurance rates aren't frozen. I mean, they adjust over time.
They adjust over time.
Unlike a mortgage, if you locked it in during COVID when it was 1%, people don't want to leave because of that. Like, shit, why would I leave? I got a 1% rate. If I go somewhere else, I'm going to have to re-sign a 7% rate.
That's right.
And now you're seeing people who are just basically stuck, and these houses are worth more. Their insurance has gone up, but their interest rates stay the same. If they move, then they get the double whammy.
Well, I think
nobody wants to sell if you have this great interest rate.
I'm worried about seeing what I have to pay because mine renews. Like I said, my homeowners dropped me. I think I'm with FEMA for flood, so...
Everybody has the FEMA. Basically, everybody has a
national
flood insurance. They're the only
ones that would take it. So it was either $3,500 a year, or I think it was like $7,000. Like it was such a jump, and I was like, FEMA. Yeah. But
look, my insurance, my homeowners got canceled twice this year.
So as you know a lot about.
I haven't forgotten it either.
Obviously, this is a huge thing for Floridians because obviously, if you're a homeowner or a renter, it's going to influence your costs. when you're campaigning or going through being governor, you have to learn so much about individual things, insurance being one of them. You have to learn about healthcare, school board. How do you go about having these kind of small bits of extensive knowledge in so many different capacities that affect Floridians? Do you work with professionals in each part? An insurance person, do they kind of coach you on what you understand the rules and regulations to be and how you want to change those things? Is that kind of the process? It's
a little bit of that, and it's also more like the one thing I'm really thankful for is my background in finance and banking and insurance really prepared me to be in politics, because anybody can come into my office and try to give me a song and dance about, sir, they'll come in and they'll be like, oh, look, sir, this is the way this is happening in our industry and it's very terrible and we need you to change this. And I'll sit there and I'll listen and I'm nodding my head like, oh yeah, okay. And then they leave and my staff will be like, well, what do you think about that? I'm like, that's a bunch of BS. Here's how it works. Because I had a career in business and finance. Like I underwrote businesses for a living.
Because the government is essentially
for
business.
5 years.
I mean,
well, no, forget the government. Any industry, any special interest that comes in is a part of some industry and they want a specific thing. Some of it is altruistic and it matters for the market. Some of it is not altruistic and they just want a change that suits either them specifically or suits their portion of the industry or their portion of the trade.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to.
I'm hesitant of people. The louder they yell about how good they are as a human, I'm like,
yeah, that's one of the good ones. Yeah. So like, you have to have in my view, to do this effectively, you got to have some semblance of baseload knowledge. Yeah. Mine comes from economics and finance. So I always tell my staff, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. Right. So if you want me to set up some policy where it's going to require the government to come in and backfill it periodically, then it's not making dollars. It doesn't make any sense because you got to subsidize it over the long term. So you can't do stuff like that. So to the core of your question about, do you have to have a little bit of knowledge about everything? Not really. What you got to have is baseload understanding, in my view, of economics, of finance, of business, so that when you're applying regulation and or tax policy to a situation, you already have an idea of how that's going to impact business owners, how that's going to impact families.
That's why Trump's a beast.
Yeah, that's why Trump's a beast, because he's been doing business for so long that you come in here with some song and dance about, I need this special tax break for this. And he's like, no, you don't. You don't need that. You want it, but you don't need it.
Print more money and create more inflation. Just fund that. What was maybe the way it used to happen, and now we can't continue to go down that hole.
I mean, look, you get advised on a lot of things. Like I do briefings all the time. Like we were talking insurance earlier. I've had conversations with the carriers and the trial bar. I talk to everybody. That's how I've always handled myself through politics. I talk to everybody. I want to get all the input, and then I'll sit down and synthesize out what we're actually going to do. Because what you find is when you get everybody's story, the truth is somewhere in between.
Of course.
And the solutions are somewhere. Yeah, the solutions are somewhere in between. And so I think now running for governor, you take all that knowledge. Like you mentioned education. I helped start a charter school back in 2014. My wife has been involved in education the last 5 years.
Because I think education is becoming a huge problem. You have all these kids dropping out of public school and choosing to do private school because of policies and homeschooling. I think what happened over COVID and a lot of this kind of miscommunication and miseducation that was happening of the youth, a lot of people are like, I'm taking my kid out of school.
I put my kid at his school.
A lot of people did. I mean, almost every person that I'm friends with, and majority of them have the means to do it, their kids are now in school costing $10,000, $15,000 a year, and majority of people cannot afford that. And now if you have these kids that are being indoctrinated in public school, or their opinion of that, as the governor, you have to be willing to step in and say, the dismantling of the Department of Education, controlling the federal, school system. Shouldn't we at the state level choose what our kids are being educated on?
Yeah, and that's something where Florida has led. When I was in the legislature, before I left to go to Congress, we passed universal scholarships in our state. So before, if a child went to a public school, obviously they were funded for that school. And then the law changed, I think when Jeb was governor, where if they went to a charter school, they were funded for that charter school. But if you went to a private school, you had to pay that out of pocket.
Yeah.
Unless you were basically you were earning at or below 200% of the poverty line. Then we had a tax credit scholarship for poor children in our state. Well, now we've expanded it to where it's a universal scholarship. So it doesn't really matter who you are. If you take your kids to like Canterbury's not too far from here in Fort Myers, or Bishop Verreau in Fort Myers, if you want to take your kid to one of those schools, the state now pays the first $8,500 of that.
For any kid?
For any kid.
Really?
No
That's
kidding.
in Florida.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
Other states are now following that model. So if a parent decides, I want to go to this private school, it's the Florida Empowerment Scholarship here in Florida. You can apply for that scholarship. The first $8,500 of the school's tuition now goes from the state to the school that you choose. Now, here's what's happened as a result. Every private school and every charter school, they're full.
Yeah.
Every private school and charter school is full.
How much is
They have
that a
waiting
year
lists.
typically?
It's $8,500 a year.
I mean,
Give or take.
how much
school.
is the actual school? Like,
You
what
gotta
would
ask. You gotta ask the school.
What's the like? Because I
there's
went
no
to a
average.
private
I
school
think
in
Canterbury's
Australia,
like
and that
15,
thing was
16
like,
grand.
Yeah, what about
there's no
community
average. It's
school
all
in
about
Naples?
community schools about $28,000 a year. I think First Baptist is.
And I went
like
to Florida State
around 10,
University. It was
9,
cheaper
10.
than
I looked,
Bro, I remember.
It's all
I
a
went
matter
to
of
school
what
20
school you
years
choose.
ago, and it was like we were like insane when it was like 6. Like that was our private school,
Right.
And we're like,
But all we said was, look, everybody is paying taxes into the education of our kids. When you pay the sales tax in Florida, you are paying into the pot of money that goes to educate children.
so it should go there.
And so the decision we made in Florida, Ron DeSantis was governor when this became law. He was governor. He signed it. The legislature had been wanting it for years. The reason I ran to be in the state house was to do universal choice scholarships in Florida. So when we passed it and it became law, we were just saying, look, if you have children in Florida, you get to decide the environment you go to, and the state will invest in you as a parent as opposed to just investing in bureaucracy.
Is that $8,500 a calculation of what they say that kid costs in the public school sector? So like kind of you're taking that cost out of the public school and you're just putting it into the private school.
That's a good point.
Like is it kind of a theoretical wash? Is that how they're coming up with that number?
Before we did it, what would actually happen was we were funding kids in public school. They had to sign up for there's surveys that are done 3 times a year in public schools, and as long as the number of children are in that school, the school would get paid the $8,500. All we did is expand that, so we're paying more as a state overall for education because parents are saying, "Well, my kid was never in public school,
Right?
But they're still a kid in the state." And so now we
Hey, what
fund
if I
that
don't
even
have
if they're
kids?
in a
Can I get
private
$8,500 back?
No, you can't. You gotta. We invest in children.
I'm paying
That's
for
what we do.
their kids. Got you. All right.
What about? Because I heard
checking.
there was something about even homeschooling grants as well. Is
That's a part of it.
Yeah.
I think homeschoolers don't get as much because you're not dealing with the infrastructure.
can't regulate it
that
as much,
schools.
yeah.
No, it's not even about regulation. I think when we opened it up, because even a private school, like we don't control a private school's curriculum. They can have whatever curriculum they have. There are standards that the state says you have to achieve academically. But we don't set curriculum for private schools. We don't set curriculum for homeschools or for charter schools, or parochial schools. We don't do that.
Is there a movement? Sorry, is there a movement with like? There is a big thing right now that I'm seeing where like kids are learning using AI and like they've got like 2-hour training days or like they learn with AI for like 2 hours a day and then.
Right.
But they're performing in like the top 3 percentile. Is there like are you guys looking into that as a tool for maybe suggesting schools use AI teachers in a way?
So I'm actually glad you brought that up. One of the things that I want to do as governor is create an AI sandbox for the development of personalized AI modules for kids.
Oh, that'd be
through
cool.
education. Think of it more not as a teacher, because what I've come to realize is that human interaction is critical for the development of children.
Yeah.
So teachers are not going anywhere. We love teachers. We're keeping teachers. But the AI module can be a tutor
Yeah.
It can be a supplement to what teachers are doing in the classroom. So the way I envision it, parents have to opt in. This is not mandatory. I don't believe in mandates, putting mandates on children. I don't believe in that. Or parents. I think parents have to decide this is what they want to do.
Yeah.
But if parents make that determination to do this and they want to stay with it, they have to opt in and stay in. If they choose to not do it anymore, obviously they could turn the thing off. But you could have a situation where you have an AI module specific to that child that will help that child achieve mastery in education. Right now, we have about 4.3 million students in the state of Florida. About half of them are at what we call grade level. About half. The other half are not.
And what's grade level? Like not where
Like their education's at the grade they're in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they're just
Like
kind
they're
of, which is the
coasting.
average. So like, let's say half of our students in Florida on average are at grade level or above when it comes to math reading in the 3rd grade. Imagine if you shifted that number just 10%. 60% of students in Florida are at grade level in math and
Because
reading.
they say stuff like competing countries like China, Asia, Japan, like that.
Oh, yes.
Like they're
Well,
100% above.
And that's the point. And that's the point.
If not more.
Well, nobody's 100%. China likes to say that, but they lie.
they get rid of all the other ones.
Yeah, this is basically what happens. But
They're like, you don't go to school anymore.
if you shift kids, if you have the way with using innovation, whatever it might be, to get 60% of your kids at grade level or above, not only are you the best school system in the country, K-12, you're probably the best school system in the world.
Because I'm sure
right
other
now
countries
we're
dumb that
competing
grade level
against the
down
world.
too.
Yeah.
Of course, we're competing against the world.
'Cause
If Florida was a country, we'd have the 15th largest economy in the world. If Florida was a country.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
we are competing against the world. So let's set kids up to be competitive with their peers around the world.
And we need to set up the next generation too with how to use AI, because I think what conservatives have been traditionally kind of guilty of is they're conservative. Like, oh, the internet's not really a thing. It's a fad. TV's where it's going. And then, in comes the internet. That I think if we can get on top of like, hey, this is going to be the next tool that will skyrocket. Like whoever's good at AI is going to have a a significant unfair advantage against everyone who doesn't.
Right.
But if we can set up the next generation to be really proficient at using that tool, it will also give our children like a very good step up in terms of like the next couple of decades.
Listen, as long as we believe in using electricity, AI is going to be here. Quantum computing is coming.
Yeah, that stuff's
very,
wild.
very, very
It's
fast.
unstoppable.
Yeah.
And I think that people need to. I think we got to make sure that our children are prepared to dominate in an economy that's based on AI, based on quantum. The crazy part is people are already dealing with AI now. They just don't know it. It's embedded in your phones.
It's embedded in
It's
everything.
all over the place.
It's even what's crazy what it's able to do is like I've actually kind of been training mine and I talk to it like it's my assistant. So if I'm driving, for example, I just talk to my ChatGPT bot that I've been training, and even for like podcasts, I'm like, hey, research this person, and then we're having this conversation. I'm like, hey, note that for later, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that I can now just leverage my time even in the car, which I couldn't before, because I can't just sit there scrolling while I'm driving. It's gonna have a bad day.
Yeah,
but
you're gonna have a bad day.
you're gonna have a real bad day.
Yeah, man.
But
You should
the
be
fact
doing
I'm
that while
just
you're
chatting
driving.
to this like it's my assistant and it's researching in real time, like, oh yeah, well we found this and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, note that for later. And then, like, hey, for this guest, bring up these questions that we already pre-saved. Like, it's such a crazy tool that I think if kids are not knowing how to treat it like that, I think, it's such an unfair advantage these days.
Quickly, before we get back to the episode, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't on whatever channel you're watching or listening to the ManLab. And if you're listening on Spotify, if you could leave a 5-star review on the channel page, that would be greatly appreciated because that will help continue to push it a little bit further for whoever is looking for information to help improve their health. Now, on the topic of information, if you are on YouTube, you can leave a comment below on this episode and we will respond to it with as much information as possible, or it might be another episode down the road. The reason this is important is because the more questions you guys ask, the more we know what we need to do to serve you guys better in future episodes. So comment on YouTube, leave a 5-star review, hit subscribe, and let's continue to help making men great again. Let's get back to the show.
So being mindful of your time, because I know you got some other things to show up to in a little bit. A couple questions I want to know that are relative to our business and our audience. What's your opinion on what they're going to do about cloud seeding? Is that something that the federal government or the state level, we control what's above us here? I mean,
there's actually a bill in the legislature right now to ban it and make it illegal. And a couple of the legislators, they were calling me and texting me, and they go, "How do you feel about this cloud seeding thing?"
What is that again?
What makes weather? It's spraying aluminum into the sky, creating
crazy mess. I hate it. I was like,
that
stuff is. That's why we get more hurricanes.
I was like, this is nuts. I said, this is nuts.
So they actually do that. That's confirmed.
So yeah, it's confirmed. Like there was this. If anybody's ever seen like the movie Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And so essentially,
like
they're trying to block
circumnavigating the planet because they were trying to save the planet from global warming, and they were spraying crap into the air. And people were actually doing it. I'm like, are you nuts? What are we doing messing with clouds? I do not agree with it.
What the hell?
So there's a bill in the legislature right now. I think it's going to pass, as I understand it. I think it passed the floor of the House the other day in Tallahassee. And I know, the governor, he's going to sign that. I don't see why he wouldn't. But yeah, it's going to be banned in Florida.
So we're such an out. She's right.
Of course.
Dang it. All right.
Well, when you're outside, we're a state that we moved here because of being outside, right? I mean, we all want to be out in the sunshine state.
Yes.
The idea that they're legally allowed to spray something into the air that has
here's the deal. It's not even legally allowed. It's just that nobody knew.
Oh, it's not illegal.
Well, it's not illegal.
So it reflects a part of the amount of sun that comes down. So it reduces the heat, and then it also stimulates weather. It stimulates more waterfall. And yes, the reason why we see more hurricanes is because there is tampering with the weather. I mean, there's no doubt that shit happens. If you think it's not, you're crazy.
Dude, you're blowing my mind right now.
When I found out,
they can start earthquakes, they can start hurricanes.
What?
Yes,
I found out about it earlier this year, and I was just like, wait, what? And so, like, here's how some of this stuff starts. So, at the federal level, one of the reasons why the left is so upset about Elon tearing through the agencies, which we finally, thank God, somebody's tearing through the agencies. What you find is that there are all these little grant programs that are nestled away in the federal bureaucracy that nobody knows about. And these grant programs, which are just about anything you could
but aren't those about funding NGOs? I mean, they're
partly
it's an NGO that's essentially. I mean,
I
listened to the podcast with Elon and Joe Rogan where he's talking about
NGOs, it's part just agency directed grants. Some of it goes to universities, some of it goes to think tanks
these weird
in the United
projects.
States and overseas, and they're all pet project stuff.
Yeah,
all of it.
Why
as governor, hold on. So as governor, your belief system especially is because I've been told that the airspace above us is federally controlled. But then under the rational thinking that if you're the governor, you could say, well, I don't want these airplanes flying over Florida state space and spraying the shit 100%. All over my citizens and the residents that live here. So that's something that you're going to believe in.
100%. You're not taking off in the plane in our state doing that mess.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, when you get into the air, that might be federal, but when you're on the ground, you belong to us.
You're not landing.
And then we ain't letting that happen. Period.
So, seeing as this is blowing my mind in this conspiracy theory that's true, my wife has a conspiracy theory that you may or not know. So whenever there's fog that comes in here, it seems like everyone gets really sick. And we've seen other conspiracy theories that have come true where like San Francisco where they put pathogens in the fog to get people sick and test out some things. Is that still happening? Do you even know?
I honestly don't know.
Can you look into that?
I think that's a little deep.
That I don't know.
I don't know.
All right.
You got a little bit too far now.
On another one, I don't know how much.
That's too far?
Yeah.
So the Surgeon General of Florida,
Lapido.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you know, but 2 years ago, there was a change in our industry in which certain medications that we had access to through compound pharmacies were deemed no longer labeled to be produced. And there was this argument, in peptides specifically, because they weren't FDA approved. So Lapido said, the purpose of the compound pharmacy industry was to allow non-big pharma on a local level to physicians to decide what their residents, medications needs are.
Right.
And say, well, you shouldn't be able to control on a federal level what we on the local state-run side are going to be enforcing. And RFK came out and said the same thing and said, look, like compound pharmacies should have the state abilities to decide what medications are going to be offered, to their residents, especially from their providers and their physicians.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot if you don't know anything about it, but what's your position on agreeing at the federal level should have control of what the compound pharmacy industry is allowed to produce for doctors that recommend these products?
So to be blunt, I'm not educated on compound pharmacies.
Okay.
I'm not. As you describe it, though, I see no problem why state agencies can't be the ones who oversee that process. Primarily because now I work at the federal level, and I know that either A, there are vested interests at the federal level in these agencies. The agencies try to say that they're altruistic. No, they're human beings. They're humans like anybody else. They have vested interests. Number two, I believe that we have to start actually decreasing the level of power and authority at the federal level. A lot of stuff actually has to come back to state level government. One of the reasons why the Constitution was written the way it was written is because the signers of the U.S. Constitution, which were the states at the time, they did not want to empower a federal leviathan, a federal bureaucracy. They still wanted to maintain core controls over most things affecting the lives of people. And the powers enumerated to the federal government are really in Article 1, Section 8, because those are the powers that Congress can actually vote for, delineate, and execute, that the executive branch executes on behalf of Congress. That's the way the federal Constitution was drafted. There's actually limited powers at the federal level. So when it comes to this issue, the way I just lean philosophically is anything that brings power and authority to state government that state government can do that the federal government doesn't have to do or is not outlined in the Constitution should come back to state level powers.
And I'm not saying as a governor you have the right to choose this or this isn't right for the people, but I think there should be a board on the state level that has a chance to review each individual product and decide, for example, BPC 157, it's a healing peptide. It has almost zero negative consequences, very little, if no contraindications. It promotes health, promotes anti-inflammatory. There's the conspiracy side of us would say, well, they don't want you to utilize something that can prevent you from being a client of Big Pharma, because if it can make you healthy, then you're stealing from their pocket, from the federal government's association with Big Pharma. I'm not saying you need to make this position, but my philosophy is if you can make peptides great again, I think you get a lot of people on your side. We need peptides to come back to the state. I think a lot of people, a lot of the elderly population and a lot of the youthful population, athletes and whatnot, come here. Our industry, with a huge amount of presence with it, it was a big blow. And I think a lot of people were pretty disappointed that the federal government had that kind of control to say you can't prescribe these things anymore.
Even the definition that they gave on the FDA, because we went through it and it was like, might cause a rash. I'm like, then I turn on the TV and there's all these drugs that might kill you. And, just be aware of that. But it's like,
might cause rectal bleeding.
Yeah, it's like, you might kill yourself. You might do a couple of wild things, but don't take that because it gives you a rash, maybe. Like, it just seemed to
It's just sad because there's so many things out there that are very low risk profile that have so many benefits, and it's like, now you can't use it. And that's a little bit frustrating when people are trying to be proactive.
Well, I think we're finally seeing the beginning of the Make America Healthy movement start. And again, I've said this in other podcasts. I don't care what side of you lean towards. Of course, the left is going to disagree, but for whatever reason.
Well, no. And to that point, I will say the crazy left disagrees.
Yeah, they're wildly crazy left. Like, they still think like shoot up vaccines and take all the red number dye for you can.
Yeah,
you
they
can
think
handle.
that's good stuff, and I'm like, whoa.
Or is it more just they just want to disagree? Humans need a bad guy.
Well, they're dyeing their hair blue, so they might as well dye their food blue.
Like humans in nature, it's like we kind of need a bad guy, and I think especially with how the media, like both sides, it's like the left only focuses on the crazy right. The right only focuses on the crazy left.
But there's everybody there in the middle between the crazy and the crazy that we should somewhat.
Like, hey.
I think that the healthy component, I don't care what side you truly are, you have to believe that there's a massive health epidemic in this country. I think RFK is exposing it. We just saw the data come out on the autistic kids. They said 136 and one out of 20 males age 8 are autistic, and they said 1 out of 12.5 in California are autistic. And they're saying why now are they starting to realize? Because it's the most vaccinated state in the country, and there's a correlation. But why is it taking so long to start figuring this out? If I had a child, and I have a very good friend who has an autistic son, and you can see the impact on their family. And if this could be reversed by simple observations and research, like the government should be working towards, we can fix the economy, we can fix trade deficits and tariffs and do all this shit. But if we have this unhealthy population, what's the point? If everybody's sick and everybody has these mental problems and everybody's obese and everybody has heart disease, everybody's dying young or old due to drug interventions, I think that's just a really poor management of government that we've turned a blind eye to that for so long.
I think there's a tricky thing though too, is like parents, because the reason why we ended up not getting him was because I was like, I don't know. And I know that even like they say, like autism presents itself at 2 years, which is coincidentally when you get the.
But I'm not talking about just vaccines in general. I'm saying the health initiative. How much are you wanting to, like, what is your position on the health of the state of Florida, the people who live here, and what do you think we can do to improve it?
Oh, I think it's everything from, like I said, moving a lot of authority out of the FDA, bringing stuff back to state level authority. Primarily, I mean, you talked about Lapido's position on compound pharmacies, primarily because people in Florida have far more access to their legislature and to their governor than they do the federal Congress or the president of the United States. I know that because I've served at both levels. People have more access just to me as a member of Congress when I was a state representative. Far more access.
Right.
You have more ability to petition the Agency for Healthcare Administration in Florida as opposed to the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington. People have more access to that. So I think that stuff just has to be brought back to the state level, generally speaking. I think to the health movement, the MAHA movement, we'll call it MAHA for lack of a better phrase, that's more popular than anything else. I've been in so many different arenas for the president, and I got to tell you, whenever you brought up health issues, the roar of the crowd was way larger than tax policy.
Yeah.
People, cut my taxes. Yeah. And look, I don't want to raise taxes. We want to cut them. We want to extend the president's tax policy.
Because most people don't understand the economy as well either.
But when it comes to the things we ingest in our body, when it comes to health, people are not just fascinated by it, they want it. They want real reforms that are going to put them in the best position to be healthy. Is there authority on the state
level to ban food choices like they're trying to do on a federal level? Can you say, hey, I won't allow
to a degree
dyes to be sold here or this drug to be used in this state? I mean, do we have that? But then you don't want to be this big government control either.
You kind of don't. And the reason why is because of interstate commerce. So there are protections for interstate commerce that are the domain of the federal level. Because essentially, even though the cause celeb is tariff policy at the federal level, what you don't want to see in the fabric of the United States are essentially trade barriers between states.
It's like marijuana.
Because if you have trade barriers between states, essentially economics has always been, in the history of the planet, economics has always been the dividing line of how societies come apart. So if you have trade barriers between states, like let's say,
doesn't that exist in the alcohol industry though? Like I was listening to
marijuana too.
Like there is kind of that.
That's why there's a marijuana disagreement. But to alcohol, every state has their own distribution system. But the content of alcohol, it is a universal standard in the country.
Yep.
So how you distribute it in different states, that's different. But the content is a universal standard. That's why the content for food is the universal standard. So I think when you're talking about getting rid of dyes and additives and things like that, people are craving that. People are desiring that because we're seeing in America the lack of healthy people in our country. And then from a fiscal standpoint, there are real cliffs in the future of having to spend additional money to try to help keep people alive or help to get people over these health hurdles that, in my view, are created by food and the things that we ingest. And then you get people who travel. And it's the crazy part about social media. People travel. We hear all the stories. I was in Europe and I was eating pasta and eating all this stuff, and I felt great. I didn't feel like I had to go sit down and take a nap.
I think that there's also an issue with the education component in this that happens. I mean, you can turn on TV at any point and there's a advertisement for a drug. It's damn near almost every single commercial on every single popular show, whether it be the Super Bowl to your favorite sitcom. Why do we not ever try to educate people on nutrition? Or, I mean, I guess if the state or the federal government was to fund it, we had periodic commercials advising people on healthy food choices versus the bullshit that's constantly on TV or the drugs that are constantly being advertised. Because, yeah, it's all about money, and I get that. But if we're spending money to keep people healthy, meaning on drugs, in the hospital networks or in other systems, why don't we try to educate the consumers? And part of that could be from, supplementing TV commercials and or not allowing such a high degree of that stuff to be present in the advertising. I mean, you go to other countries, you don't see them advertise drugs on TV.
Yeah,
at all.
That's a real problem. That's something we do that.
It's unique.
But
to
that being
America.
said, I mean, look, at the libertarian side of me also says, if you want to run ads on your product, we are a free society. We don't believe in limiting, or I know I don't believe in it. We don't believe in limiting people's ability to promote their ideas, promote their products, or whatever the case might be. I believe we do have a responsibility to make sure that whatever we're allowing into food or substances actually has to be to the benefit of people, to their health, and not to their detriment.
Because that's the issue with Big Pharma is it's like they have all these fails. Like, they don't have to really show the studies in the vaccines. They don't have to. First of all, you can't be sued, which is crazy. It's like imagine if, you bought a car and they just forgot to install the brakes and then you crash and they're like, sorry.
On that one, it depends on the pharmaceutical or the narcotic you're
exactly,
talking about.
You want to.
Well, we unfortunately, I'm sure we could sit here and talk for as long as we need, but we know you have another meeting you got to get going to, so we don't want to make you late, obviously. I know your schedule's tight. You guys want to throw anything else in? Any more last minute questions?
The other boys hopping in?
Yeah, I think they're going to jump in a second.
Yeah.
I guess, just when you're done in politics, what do you want to be remembered for doing? What do you think, what kind of legacy do you want to leave?
To be honest, I don't really think about legacies. I just want to do smart things for people and just have the institutions or have the state better off than I found it. And that's it.
Does governor lead to presidency for you?
Who knows?
So I'll tell you one thing at the fight. There's everyone around me was like, I love that guy.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't even say nothing about knowing you, just talking about you in general. And they're like, I hope to God he gets governor.
And in case anyone's listening, we were just.
They got to go vote.
We were at USC 314 in Miami, and Byron was there.
You got the rolling with
everybody was there, but yes, you had a good fan base. So.
I was bummed you weren't VP because seeing Trump-Donalds would be perfect. It's
that's what I thought was.
I thought he was going to do it.
We were close.
I thought that was.
My
coming.
theory was Trump would do it just because he'd be like Trump-Donalds.
You know what though?
Great.
But at the same time, we're going to lose a good governor. We need to replace a good governor with a better one. And so I'm not saying I'm not mad that you're. I'm sad that I'm not saying I'm sad. Not sad that you're not the VP, but I'm happy to think you're going to be the governor.
Listen, JD is awesome.
He's great.
Yeah, JD is awesome. He's doing a great job. President asked me, he's like, how do you think JD's doing? I'm like, sir, he's actually doing a great job. So JD's awesome. He's gonna do great for us there. And
Ron's put some big shoes. I mean, he's been a good governor for the state.
Yes.
So I mean, he took us through a really tough time, spit us out the other end, really in a great place. State of Florida is in a really great position. Pretty much Tito Ortiz is sitting right to my right. He moved from California here. Most people admire us. I talk to people all over the country, and they're like, "Man, you're so lucky. You're in such a great state."
We just want those California guys not to bring those California politics.
Get that, or that New York.
Leave that in California.
Don't New York, Florida.
Don't New York.
But yeah, man,
Florida.
you got some big shoes, and we're all confident and happy that you're on our team. So good luck.
Thank you,
good
guys.
luck, man.
Take it easy.
You got our backing.
Do you want to bring them in real quick?
As an influencer for Southwest Florida, and the fact that for millennials and Gen Z, we do love you, absolutely love you.
Cool.
We think that you're great for the state of Florida. I'm also happy that we have you running for the next governor because I think J.D. Vance is doing great.
Yes.
And I think he said something that was important to the normal LGB community in the state of Florida. And I know I saw you at some protests a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. I was there.
New Viva Medical Weight Loss has helped over 50,000 men and women in Florida lose over 500,000 pounds in body fat. Now, there are wonder drugs out there like semaglutide and tirzepatide, but it's important that these tools are used properly and safely with the correct guidance, because that guidance is what will help you make sure that you're losing that unwanted body fat while keeping the lean muscle mass. NuViva Medical Weight Loss has over 10 clinics statewide in Florida with expert coaches who are with you the entire way, helping you with any habit adjustment, large or small. The secret behind NuViva's continual success with their clients is their in-office expert experience. You will speak directly with a support coach, and if you have any questions, you will get immediate answers. If you are struggling, you will get immediate adjustments or pivots that will keep you on track with your goals. And what's great is you can choose the route of your weight loss goals. So if you just want to take diet adjustments and some supplements, you can do it. However, if you want to go a little bit of a stronger, faster approach and use semaglutide or tirzepatide, the NuViva expert coaches can also help you along the way with that as well. So if you have a lot of pounds to lose or even just a few pounds and you know that having some support with an expert coach will get you there faster, contact NuViva at either nuvivaweightloss.com or send them a message on Instagram at NuViva Weight Loss and mention the ManLab for a little perk. That is NuViva, NuViva weightloss.com or at NuViva Weight Loss on Instagram. So hit up NuViva, get an expert coach, get that support you want, and let's get you feeling amazing again and lighter again. Let's get back to the show.
So I want to put something to rest for everybody here in the state of Florida, because I think I already know the answer. Does the normal LGBT community, notice I left a lot of letters out.
There's a lot of letters.
The normal LGBT community here in the state of Florida have anything to worry about with your administration? Will you continue to protect them as Floridians? Because I know Florida has probably one of the biggest populations, most inclusive states in the entire country when it comes to that. And there's a lot of gay conservatives that live in the state of Florida. Is it even an issue? Like, is it even something that they need to talk about?
No, it's not an issue.
Thank you.
But like I said to that one lady a couple weeks ago, what we're not going to allow is for, changing genders of children.
100%.
We're not going to allow for that. Mm-hmm. We're going to protect puberty.
Yep.
We're going to let children actually grow up to be adults. The decisions they make as adults are for them to make as an adult.
Exactly.
We're not going to allow for indoctrination and for children either to be abused, to be misinformed. Mm-hmm. We're going to let the biological design of God run its course. And we're going to protect that in Florida. Awesome. Now, as an adult, if you make a decision for yourself, that's a decision you make as a consenting adult.
That's one of the reasons why I moved from California to here.
Yeah.
Because what you guys have done, what DeSantis has done, they're indoctrinating my children in school. Yeah. And one of my child was getting swayed a different way, and I was like, no, you have a penis.
Yeah. Well, I stood with parents on the parental bill when they said it was the Don't Say Gay bill.
Right.
I mean, I was part of Gays Against Groomers. I mean, we stood with parents in Florida to protect children.
Right.
And I'll continue to do that till I'll die on that anthill.
Yeah. Nice. But just at that age, they're so influential that parents don't understand, because parents, mother, father, they're both working. Mm-hmm. And then it goes to the schools. The schools are now teaching their children how to be adults, which that's not their job. Their job is strictly to the curriculum, only to the curriculum. In my manner, that when I grew up, I mean, I'm 50. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and that wasn't, I mean, I had gay friends back then. I mean, that was the
nobody
choice.
cared. Yeah.
It was not a big thing. Now it's a big thing that's trying to be pushed. And now I understand, as I've gotten older and I got into politics, and I got to understand is that's how you take over a country. You weaken the country, and you're easier to take over because you're afraid to push back. And once they made the decision, once they're 18 and older, if they want to go that way, that's fine. But as a young child, being influential at that age is so easy to take advantage of a child, where it makes them so confused that they don't understand.
Yeah. I think the tricky thing too is, like, a lot of those teachers, everyone wants to be the hero. So if I'm the one that encourages this child to be comfortable, to come out, not realizing they're actually coercing and like influencing them, like it's like this cycle, the therapist and patient cycle. It's like, you've got repressed memories, remember it, and then you want to impress the therapist, so you start making up memories subconsciously.
Yeah.
Like, this is actual fact, and then the therapist wants to be the savior, so they're like, yes. I think that's what's also been happening with a lot of these teachers is they want to be the hero, then the student wants to please the teacher because they're like, well, I don't want to let them down and be like, nah, I'm a dude. And that's the vicious cycle, I think, psychologically that happens.
Well, over those last 2 years, been finding out actually teachers been paid.
Yes.
There's that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually something that I don't even want to talk about because it's so unimportant to me because we're in 2025.
Right.
The only
Trump's
thing
America.
that would be important is the children aspect of it. And I feel like it's such a common sense thing, which I think is one big part that makes me conservative was I'm like, I'm an OG. Like, I was raised in the 80s and 90s too. You know what I mean? Like, nobody cared. It's such an issue now, and I just wanted to knock it out because when I intend to help your campaign and door knock and do all the things to get the next best governor of Florida and protect our state, I don't want that to be one of the things where everyone's like, oh, but. And I'm like, dude, you live in Miami. Like, you have a gay pride freaking police squad car. Nobody cares that you're gay. You know what I mean? Like,
Miami's like
I don't want to.
Is Miami like that's like the blue?
I feel like it's like the Mecca.
The blueberry is it,
not
or is it
anymore.
changing?
Not anymore. It's changed.
It's Orlando.
I know.
Orlando's the
God.
blueberry in the tomato soup.
It's Orlando followed. It's Orlando followed by Tampa.
Tampa,
Followed by Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale?
Oh yeah,
Broward
dude. I went
County.
against
Yeah.
Antifa and all kinds of people in Fort Lauderdale.
That's where. I guess I would say those are the blue zones in Florida. Now.
zones.
Miami-Dade is going red. Miami's going red.
Really?
yeah, Cuban.
Interesting.
Yeah, the
Cubans.
Venezuelans.
Yes.
It's going red.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Tito, you got a question? You just happy to be here?
So with the school, I mean, I
It's
have
good seeing him, man.
Yeah. So I have twin boys that are 16. They go to Ida Baker High School. A big issue that is happening, and this is as governor, and I've talked to Sheriff Carmine about this also, is vapes and marijuana vapes in the schools. Now, when I grew up in school, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I thank God I got wrestling and I got away from smoking marijuana. But if you got caught with marijuana, you got caught with cigarettes at school, you're expelled. Done. Here, and my son was a victim of it. He got caught with a vape, and they sent him home for the day. I was like
it's no big deal.
he took an ass whooping when he got home. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I ain't agreeing about beating
This is why they
children
call me
down.
the champ.
No, I know. He took a belt whipping. I mean, as a father, I'm going to be, and I took the same ass whipping before. He learned for about 2 weeks to a month, and then started hanging out with the same kids again. And once again, it's influential about the kids that are hanging around, but it's almost like the teachers are turning a blind eye to it. And there's 2 officers in every school, but they kind of turn a blind eye to it. The kid comes out of the bathroom, they smell like weed, and nothing's being said, and they can't be searched because they have their rights. No. How can something like this?
No. Yeah, our lockers were never protected. Like, teachers could just search them.
No, I mean, the kids who smoke cigarettes, they smoke cigarettes off campus. You never did it in the bathrooms. I mean, they got vapes that in the bathrooms, marijuana that's in the bathrooms. You can't go in the bathrooms. You can't search a kid. Is there something like some type of legislator that you can do to make it a zero tolerance for the schools? Because it's important. Because the kids now that are smoking vapes, they're having seizures off of it. That's one of the biggest things, that they're having seizures off of it. And it scares the shit out of me because my child did have a seizure, and he's a super smart kid. He's ace classes. But once again, it was the kids who he surrounded himself with. How can we stop that? And how can we make it a zero tolerance here in Florida? I mean, that's why I moved from California to here, because California kids have free for all. They do whatever they want. Parents let them do what they want. Teachers let them do whatever they want. Police can't do their jobs. When I lived there in the 80s and 90s, I graduated in 93, there was zero tolerance in that at all. And it made me think triple, like, should I do this? No. And here, the kids have a free-for-all. How is something that we can do to fix that, to make it safe for the parents knowing going to school that nothing's going to happen? I mean, in the bathrooms with kids, I mean, even like a searching the kids coming in and out, zero tolerance.
So I mean, like, what you're talking about is a real problem. Like,
huge.
Kids are vaping all over the country, all over the state, all over the country. They're vaping. It's a real problem. We have a couple issues with it. One, we actually had a hearing the other day on Capitol Hill. You have Chinese vapes that have flooded the market in part because the FDA, I know we were talking about that a little bit earlier, the FDA doesn't have the ability to actually check the contents of vapes that are manufactured in China.
Why is that?
It's how I understand it is what they do for the FDA checks is they do a Zoom call with the manufacturing plant in China and they watch the process over there.
So like when you buy something from China, it has like the QC on it. It's like quality check.
Yes.
And it's like a shitty little stamp.
Yes.
And you're like,
and then it gets shipped over here, and it's in every gas station, every smoke shop here in the States. And nobody knows what the full content of these Chinese vapes. This is a serious problem. Then you get to, then there's like the hemp stuff where there's like hemp and then there's marijuana in like two different industries. And then like hemp guys have their own stuff. And then the marijuana people have their own stuff. So vapes in general, like we really do need a serious work through on all this stuff because the content of these vapes is no telling what's in half of the stuff anyway. To your point, in schools, zero tolerance, yeah, we do need to look into that. Legislatively, we could do it because in the state, if the state legislature and the governor say, you're not allowed to smoke that stuff on school premises, period, there are no equivocations, then that sets a standard for every school district in the state that they now have to comply to make sure that kids aren't vaping on school premises.
Well, if you need a speaker to help you with that, I'm all in.
All right.
Yeah, my kids
you guys
got
are
another
super
3 years,
passionate about that.
And I'm super passionate because I'm a wrestling coach at Ida Baker High School, and I know there's kids that walk in the room and I can smell marijuana on them, and I can't say something to them automatically. I mean,
right.
I got to be a coach. I get it. And then I see other kids that walk around, and my kids are like high-fiving by, and I could see it right on their face. I'm not a stupid guy. I've been through it. I've done it as a young kid. I want to make sure my child's safe when he goes in and out of from classroom to classroom, because that's when it's happening. When they're going from classroom to classroom, they're going into the bathroom and going in and out.
What about people of age? Like, I know there was a vote recently that didn't make the vote for like, I don't think it was recreational use or something. And I know you've spoken out against recreational versus medical.
Right.
Now, I don't smoke it, never have, but I remember when my wife asked me, should she vote for or against? And I was like, I'm still personally of the form of yes, make it legal, because I think, like, look at alcohol. Alcohol does way more damage to people than any other drug does. But I find that because it's legal, I think a lot of people sort of go like, it's not rebellious. Whereas smoking weed is like that little rebellion thing, and a lot of us like to do it. Then my mindset is more like, yeah, sure, the initial thing, like what Trump and Elon are doing in office right now, it's painful short term, but we're going for long term. My personal belief is if it's legal, sure, some people are going to abuse it at the beginning. And then quickly it's like, it's not the cool rebellious thing anymore. It's like, yeah, cool, you smoke weed.
For kids,
I don't care.
Well,
not even kids, I mean like for adults.
He's talking about adults.
For adults.
Well, I mean,
so I think like...
For kids, the answer is just
kids
flat
is no.
Well, here's the problem is when you do it for adults and it's legal for adults, because it's happened in California. It has an easier accessibility to the children.
Yes.
Because they get it from their parents, they get it from their uncles, they get it from their aunts.
But if that's still a crime, like that still is something that is enforceable, because like, yeah, like if you started giving 17-year-old or 16-year-old alcohol here, that is a felony.
Yeah.
So like the law still holds, like, I'm just basically saying like the same setup alcohol has for marijuana, where it's like, you're an adult, we don't want to do government overreach, you know, like weed is weed. Like I've never seen someone go, like, if anything, they just become lazy, but I think people like need to pay their bills too.
Well, I think my thing is what happened with the vote last year is they tried to put it in the Constitution. And so my position is, look, I don't think that stuff belongs in the Constitution, because the Constitution is really for how this government is organized, period, full stop. And so I think if you're going to do it, it has to go through the legislature. Now the question is, can you get it through the legislature? This version of it, probably not, but who knows? We'll see how that goes. And then at that point, you make a decision. But putting it into the Constitution, I'm opposed to it, always been opposed to it. And that's just the way it is. When medical went through, and it's in the Constitution now. So what was set up with medical was about 7 different companies that had vertical integration of medical marijuana, and you have to go and get a you got to get a prescription ID card and all the stuff that you got to do.
Mm-hmm. Is that like how California was like 10 years ago, where you're like, oh, I have sad feelings, and they're like, sure.
It's before California went to recreational, and that's somewhat the model, not totally. I think we're more stringent than what California was. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're going to go down the line of making it essentially legal or recreational use, I think people got to be really careful before they make that decision.
Yeah.
The thing that I want to see happen, and I think it's important if you're in marijuana writ large, is it really just has never been studied. So what you have is you have these various products that are available, but there haven't been clinical trials around dosage, around efficacy. So, some of the stuff that's out there, like this stuff is like crazy.
Yeah, I've heard people say the stuff that's
some of the stuff
now
that's out there is crazy. So I think that I know there's talk about, and it's happened the last 2 presidential administrations, around taking marijuana off of Schedule 1 as a Schedule 1 narcotic and making it a Schedule 3 narcotic.
What's the difference?
So that way you could do clinical trials.
Okay.
So essentially what would happen is...
Because this Schedule 1's kind of wild. Like that's kind of crazy.
That's felony.
For marijuana to be a Schedule 1 narcotic.
Yeah, it seems like kind of wild to be that extreme.
Yeah. And so they would take it off Schedule 1, and then it would allow for clinical trials in marijuana. So you can study dosage, efficacy, strength, etc. And then you have some very clear guidelines about the impact and the effects depending on the product. So I think before you even get to full recreational, I do think you have to go through that process. And I'm not a big pharma fan, but there has to be some base set of science where you're actually studying the products before you can then say, okay, here's what's allowable. Because if you're going to put it on the level of alcohol, at least with alcohol, by the bottle, by the proof of the bottle, you know the level of alcohol you are consuming.
Yeah, like I know, like, all right, I have one drink. Because in Australia, they were always like, 2 drinks in the first hour, you're probably still good to drive. Then 1 every hour after that, so long as you're hydrated.
Seems like you've done this before.
I bartended for years. So like I can mathematically tell you exactly what like 1 shot is percentage-wise. Like just 'cause I did it for years, but I was like, it's very different from America. Like Australia, we go through and it's like, it's mathematical in terms of like versus America, it's like free pour. It's kind of crazy.
We don't free pour.
Places I went to.
So I have a question.
They're not in Tito's place. They don't free pour.
Never in Tito's.
Never never happens.
That costs money.
Hey guys, so just quickly, we've noticed a lot of you commenting that you're not sure where you can go to get trusted and safe peptides, semaglutide, tirzepatide, testosterone replacement therapy, or testosterone boosting therapy. And we wanted to just mention that T Clinics USA is one of those places. Now, Alex and Jeff, who you see in this podcast frequently, they're probably in this podcast right now with me, they are from T Clinics USA. And as they've shown in episode after episode, details is what matters. So just because you may want something or think you need something, they are going to make sure that you are getting the thing that is right for the goal that you have. And what's better is they offer a 10% introduction discount to anyone who is listening to the ManLab. So that is you. So if you wanted to make use of that, get peptides or testosterone from a place that you can trust that have your goals in mind and want to show you the right way to get there, go to tclinicsusa.com, mention the ManLab for 10% off your first package, and you can even ask Alex or Jeff directly any questions you may or may not have, which is kind of cool. So just again, tclinicsusa.com. If you don't want to remember that, the link is in the description of wherever you are listening or watching this podcast. Mention the ManLab in the contact form and you will receive 10% off your first package. Now let's get back to the show.
So I have a question. So you are running. We've seen the success of podcasters, social media influencers. You said earlier that Florida is a state that we have access to you guys. And it's true. We do have a lot more access to you than other states do. Moving forward in this, trying to get Byron Donalds to be our next governor, are you going to appeal to the millennial and Gen Z voter and get more influencers local to South Florida to kind of do different events and do different engagement events to ramp that up?
Yeah, we appeal to everybody.
Yeah,
the way I campaign is, and this really comes from my first campaign back in 2012. We kind of had a guerrilla marketing mindset. because we didn't really know what politics was. So, my marketing degree kind of helped me with that because it was like, well, why don't we just take on like the guerrilla marketing concept that you do with new product placement when you're trying to get into established brands. You kind of have to give it away. You give it away and you're just in all these different places that typically the big brands aren't, and you start to kind of amass a following. And I think that kind of thought process is still how I campaign to this day. So I remember running for the state house. I was knocking doors in this town called Felda, and nobody probably knows where Felda is except if you live in LaBelle or Immokalee, and you've taken the drive between LaBelle and Immokalee, Florida. And Felda's just this little town, not even a little town. You could drive by it so fast you wouldn't even notice it. And I would go out there and knock doors. And I remember one time the address took me off the main road, still paved road, to a gravel road, to a grass road. And you're driving down a grass road. And now, mind you, like, it's 2016. I'm in my sedan. Nobody knows me. I'm in like rural Florida in Felda, driving down a grass road. The house is still like a quarter mile over there. And I'm like, that's the house I'm driving to. And I get out the car and I'm like, all right, let me send a text message to my people.
Right, because this is how horror movies.
Where I am in case something goes down.
And there was no reception.
So there was two bars out there. I got 2 bars, sent a text
4G.
message like, here's where I am, and they're like, all right. But no, the long story short is you go everywhere.
Yeah.
You go everywhere. You ask for everybody's vote, everybody's support, and you just work hard.
That's why I think it was so cool to see you out there. A few weeks ago with the protesters on what was that? Hands off. It was like the hands off.
It was one of their hands off protests. Yeah, I wanted to go see it.
You were answering questions. You're like, "What's the problem?" Like, I really wish there would be more people in our government that were willing to get in like that and actually talk to the people, because we don't see that enough. So I'm basically saying I appreciate that. More of that. Is there going to be more of that?
No, stay tuned. There's going to be more.
Okay, good.
No, seems like Byron has all the solutions, so he's going to.
I know. I love that.
I got some.
We've got a hard finish for you, but I do have one quick question.
Yeah.
Can you fix the reception in Florida?
Oh, please.
Like just getting your phone cell service?
Yeah,
I go into a building and it's a black zone.
Elon will be taking care of that.
I go into like my gym, boom, it doesn't exist, and their Wi-Fi sucks. Like he had a rant yesterday about it.
Well, you know
we
why
sent
that is,
people
right?
up to space.
You know why that is, right? Because a lot of our buildings in Florida, virtually all of them now, are to a hurricane code.
Concrete.
So when you have concrete layered buildings, because when Cat 4s come through here, you want the buildings to stay standing. The byproduct
How do you get your
is
house to that level? Because I need it.
Most houses any house built after 2012
mine was
is
well
built to
before that.
hurricane code.
Yeah, they should be.
I'm screwed.
Nah, just pray.
Just hunker down.
It didn't work last time.
Well, no, any house built after 2012. No, not 2012. After 2002. Sorry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because it was after Hurricane Andrew.
Yes.
So Hurricane Andrew tore through a homestead in Miami, and houses were just demolished.
Gotcha.
And so after Andrew, Florida changed the building code to a hurricane standard. So even with Hurricane Ian, when it came through Southwest Florida, and we took that thing dead in the mouth, there was flooding issues, obviously, and people had some roof damage issues, but you didn't have houses imploding on themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And even during that storm, you had like on the beach, like Bonita Beach, Fort Myers Beach.
Yeah, that's where I lived.
The old bungalows were destroyed.
Yeah.
The new construction,
It was nothing. It was just the base level.
the base level, you had
levels.
the kick out wall,
Yeah.
which I didn't even know was a thing until
I learned that in Ian too.
You have a kick out wall in new construction.
Yeah.
So like there is a wall engineered that if heavy flood comes, it will blow out a section of the wall so the water runs through and doesn't take down the whole structure. Yeah. So in short, that's one of the reasons why you go into like larger buildings, your cell service is kind of crappy because of the construction.
Could you just put like a 5G tower on every one of those buildings?
We just need people to get better Wi-Fi in their buildings.
Everybody has Starlink.
I know you have to go, and I have one more quick question on hurricanes, okay?
Yeah.
Do you promise, or is there a way that we can reassure Floridians that insurance issues are going to get fixed here so that they can. We did? Damn it.
But we're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it.
Cool.
We're gonna go through and really look at the entire market, and everybody's got to be at the table for this. I don't care if whether you're an insurance company, trial attorney, whatever. Everybody's got to be at the table because we need solutions for people.
And you tossed around some like mitigation things as well, like I'm guessing flood walls and stuff like that. Is that what
so
you're
the cool
talking about?
stuff that the cool stuff that I think we can do is some pre-mitigation before storms. So if you're in a low-lying area, we pretty much know all the low-lying areas in the state everywhere anyway. So one of the things that I want to do is that we can probably raise money for it in the future, and then you would deploy contractors in low-lying area to help create these aqua dams.
Yeah.
So like even if you're a low-lying area and you're flood prone, if we know a storm is coming, well, why don't we just try to help people on the front end build out these aqua dams to keep water out of their house, let the storm go past, and then at least then you can mitigate a lot of the damage, help keep people in their homes while you're restoring power, restoring infrastructure, things of that nature.
Yeah, because our area, I know for sure, if you ran on that, my whole area, which we've had, like we get hit all the time, especially our community, it's like low lying and we have reverse surge as an issue. And I can tell you for a fact, like if you could do something about that, you've got that entire like 6, 7, 8 communities will be like, yeah, we'll vote for this guy.
No, I mean, I think we have low-lying areas all through the state. We know it. That's just the way it is, and so it's all identified. So I think if you have these storms coming through, let's just try to find ways to be productive. And even if the state can't like physically do it to help people, at least make sure you let people know here's what you can do.
Yeah.
To help mitigate damage before the storm. Here's the supply sets you need. Here's where you can go to get them. You know, if people don't have the means, here's how you can acquire them. And I think we gotta try to continue to think outside the box to help people before storm and after storm.
Yeah, because we need help.
All right, I got to run.
Yes, you do.
Because they already called me.
Brian, one last one.
Yeah, I know.
As a former Californian, living there 47 years, DeSantis has done an amazing job. And this is not a question for you. This is more of a statement.
Yeah.
I've watched you since 2020, everything you've done in Congress. Living here since you've been 17 years old. As a Floridian, now I am a Floridian myself. I'm very thankful for being unselfish on your part of willing to give up your name, your word, and everything you've been fighting for. I endorse you 100%. So all Latinos that are here in Florida, if you guys want to make sure that Florida continues to stay safe, you're the man to make it happen. I'm very thankful that you're able to step up and willing to be our next governor. It means a lot to me because I was on city council. I was mayor pro tem of Huntington Beach. And I know how vicious those people are on the left. Yeah. And you take it in stride, and you take it hard, and you give it back with common sense of what this country needs. So, as Tito Ortiz, I endorse you, brother. Thanks, 100%, man. You do an amazing job. Continue doing it for the future of this country. It's important, and
appreciate that.
People don't understand how unselfish it is, and how many people that do get paid under the table, and you're not one of those men. You're doing it here for our family, for this country, and for the future of this state. And I'm very thankful for it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. For sure.
Thank
very
you.
important.
It was awesome, guys.
Yes, on behalf of the normal gays, we support you as well.